Hello and welcome to Roll for Topic, a roundtable discussion about topics related to running role-playing games. My name is Andy Rao, and normally I am joined by my co-host Chris, but Chris is indisposed at the moment. Don't worry, listeners at home, he's doing fine, but he was not available to record for this episode. So I've invited not one, but two people who may be familiar faces or voices to join me as co-hosts. I don't know which order to introduce you, so whichever of you guys jumps in first can be the first to introduce yourselves.
Hey there, I am Kyle's favorite game master, John.
And I'm just Tim.
Both John and Tim have been on the show in the past. John is the co-host, as he said, of the Splat Book podcast. And Tim was most recently on in a really great discussion a number of episodes ago about running role-playing games for kids. Liz Decker was on that episode as well. So what a great discussion that was.
Super fun. Yep.
Yeah, he was also on the Splat Book once when Kyle was out discussing RPGs with kids. So
it's actually what I do. I look for people that are sick or otherwise indisposed, and I try to make my space in their space in the internet.
Nice.
It feels just one step away from being a monetizable influencer career, but there's something missing.
The pennies are coming.
Yeah.
I'm going to be rolling.
RPG Kids TikTok. That sounds great.
Yeah, I think there's a crypto thing that is really hot right now that I'm going to get in on.
Oh, great. Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's RFT, not NFT. Okay, well, one of the many reasons that I asked Tim to join us is because I recently participated in a sort of group bullying effort against Tim where we forced him to spend money on gaming stuff he doesn't need. So specifically, Palladium Books every year around the holidays, they let you purchase what they call Christmas surprise packages. You pay $50 or $60. You send them a wish list of books that you want from their vast catalog, and they pick out books that are on your wish list or inspired by your wish list. And they don't tell you what they're putting in your package, so it's a surprise. And Tim, do you remember what were the instructions you were given?
So surprisingly, I have it up because I wanted to make sure I got this right. So I knew almost nothing about Palladium games to begin with. They have a bunch of questions they want you to answer when you fill out your wish list. And so the first one I just copied and pasted directly from what you told me. So when they ask you, what are your special wants? I put, I know nothing about Palladium games, but was dared to buy a surprise package by my stupid online friends. Send me the weirdest things in your warehouse. But then there's more questions I had to answer on my own. They say, well, what are your favorites? And I was like, well, I should just be honest here. I really have no idea what I'm doing here. Just send me something weird. Got dinosaurs or evil, sexy cyborgs? I'm game for whatever. I like miniatures. I drink coffee.
Fortunately, that can all be handled with one Palladium game, but we'll get to that.
Yes.
Well, so the part that I didn't tell you guys was that I originally said, oh, hey, maybe that duck game, and then I was like, wait, is that them or is that someone else? Like the game that looks like it's Darkwing Duck. Well, that's
Free League.
Yeah, so I looked it up and I forgot what it was called. So I just typed in that Darkwing Duck video game or that Darkwing Duck board game. And then I was like, wait, it's a role-playing game. Okay, so I finally find it. I was like, oh, that's Free League. I better take that off. So delete. This is the extensive research I did when filling this form out.
I had a very vivid mental image in my mind of the Palladium staff puzzling over, what could he mean?
Yeah.
Because at first I did type in duck on their webpage to find out, and it definitely did not come up because it's not made by them. So of course it didn't come up.
The reason we are talking about all of this, dear listeners, is Tim is going to open his surprise package live on the podcast, and we're going to discuss the goodies. And Tim asked for the weirdest stuff in their warehouse, so I have high hopes.
1 minute and talk about Palladium games for those who are not familiar.
Yes, I'm one of them, so I'd love to hear about it.
They are notoriously the Palladium games have been around since the 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And it started with just a Palladium fantasy RPG. They have had a couple of licenses in the past. In fact, they have a Kickstarter right now for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I believe they did a version of the Stormbringer game, but I couldn't swear to it. Maybe Chaosium said that the whole time.
I think
but
so,
they're most famous for a game called Rifts, which is this bonkers post-apocalyptic multiverse spanning story about an Earth that has gone through this upheaval, and there's all kinds of crazy, mutants, and like it's wild. And Kevin Sembiata, who is the author and main driver of Palladium Games, is quite a character and notorious in RPG circles for just being, just having his own thing going on and doing what Kevin wants to do, So it's a quite an interesting company. It still has that small press, independent creator vibe super strong.
Yeah, I was going to ask what you guys' kind of experience was with Palladium, because I know, Tim, you have no experience. John, I'd like to hear a little bit more about like how you've intersected, if you have, with Palladium games. Growing up, I never played any Palladium games, but Palladium was this like important background scenery to the hobby for me, because especially I think Rifts came out around 1990-ish or so, and that was sort of the heyday of my youthful gaming. So when I'd go into the game store, next to the BattleTech or D&D books I was looking for, there was always this row of colorful, crazy Rifts source book covers, and
Yes,
that continued throughout the 90s. They were just like a kind of a fun and comforting sight, and they always made me curious what this Rifts game was, because you would be looking at games from the same time, the same setting, Rifts. There would be a book with like a samurai on the cover, there'd be a book with a dinosaur on the cover, there'd be a book with a robot on the cover, and
sometimes a robot dinosaur samurai,
right, exactly. Yeah. And like it would just, I wasn't into that sort of kitchen sink kind of gonzo, whatever you want to call it, setting at the time. But my mind would just spin with like, how on earth is all this stuff packed into one coherent or semi-coherent setting? So,
right.
John, what is your experience with Palladium stuff?
I have a couple of things. One is I'll drop it in the chat here, and maybe we can find a better picture if we want to include it in the show notes.
Yeah.
I grabbed this book. I've always looked for games that are not, I hate to sound like a broken record, but are not like D&D, right? So, but I wanted different fantasy RPGs. So I saw this book cover in Writer's Hobby Shop once, and it was just one of those covers that just blew my mind. Like, what is going on in this picture? Because somebody looking at it, somebody explained to me, like, describe that picture.
Tim, could you describe for us what you see here?
Oh, yeah. So, Adventures in the Northern Wilderness. So it looks like we have a wolf/shaman who is standing at the edge of maybe a murky swamp that has some looks like some skeletons like working their way out of the swamp. And I don't know. Oh, okay. So the wolf, it looks like they've got a glowing skull in one hand. Oh, they've got a nice little what is that, belt of skulls around their torso? That's
like, nice, he is
too.
Metal, right? Like,
I thought it was a
necromancer.
Well, I'm sorry. I think that this is a she wolf.
Oh,
and she takes that a little personally. So
there you go.
Maybe you watch what you say, John.
Even better. But yeah, like, I just saw that, and it's one of those pictures that like just told a story, and I'm like, I want to know more about this world. This is totally bizarre, because it's not the kind of thing you would see on the cover of like a D&D adventure, right? Like a wolf shaman necromancer summoning zombie skeletons from a swamp. And so I bought it, and I tried to play the Palladium RPG. I didn't love it. It wasn't what I was looking for. It's sort of like, in many ways, a heartbreaker for D&D, the fantasy version. But then I never played Rifts, but I've always admired Rifts for its gonzo nature, and feel like it really contributes something to the hobby just because it's so crazy. If you've ever read the setting for Rifts, it's like there was an apocalypse, the multiverse opened up, but you're still in the United States, and there's like these different factions that have formed. Like it's some crazy like historian's vision of what the future will be like, and it's born out of 80s, Cold War paranoia, and it's just, I love it. I think it's fun, though I would not probably play it.
Yeah, and we'll get into the unboxing or whatever in just a minute, but I wanted to say I also have just sort of a fondness for Palladium games, even though I have not played them very much. I did play in a game run by Kevin Sembiata. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yes,
Sembiata. At a convention a couple years ago. Had a blast. That guy, he's a great game master, a great convention game master. But the Palladium games, generally speaking, have not really been my thing rules-wise. This isn't a podcast where we talk about what's awesome and what sucks and stuff like that. So I'm not reviewing it in an objective sense, but for me, I find the rules are just a little too complex, a little too fiddly for me, generally speaking. But at the same time that I sometimes feel like this is not for me, I'm really drawn to games like this where, specifically because they're a little fiddly, they're kind of complex, they aren't organized exactly in the way that like a Dungeons and Dragons rulebook is going to be organized. To get a game experience out of it, you really have to engage with it and interact with it in a way that I don't. When I run a game of D&D, I feel like I am following the rules of Dungeons and Dragons to play
Right.
D&D. With a game like Rifts, and there's many other examples in the hobby, to get a playable game, you need to wrestle with it a little bit. And I guess I just sort of have an admiration for people that have these long running games of Palladium or Rifts or whatever, because to have had that experience, they had to have established a more personal relationship with the rules than I need to do when I just run D&D.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
It does, and it feels like a set of rules from a previous time too. If you were to compare it to rule books in the early '90s, it might fit in very well. But if you look at it compared to rule books now, if you put it next to a copy of Trophy Dark or Brindlewood Bay or something, you'd be like, are these both the same kind of game? You would be maybe suspicious. So
yeah. There's a certain, at least in some of the early Palladium stuff that I collected here and there. Also, their books tended to be cheaper than the competitions.
Yes.
So like I did pick up source books here and there that looked cool, and there's a sort of zine quality to them, in that there's a certain assumption that you kind of already know how to play D&D, and you're bringing that knowledge into this new game. For better or for worse, there's maybe, I guess, missing stuff or some assumptions that you'll be able to come into Rifts or Palladium Fantasy or whatever and combine this new stuff with your existing understanding of how to play D&D and get through it. And I don't know if that would, fly exactly. Well, I don't know. You see some of this in like sort of the OSR Mothership Morkborg environment today, I think.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, so the problem with Andy is he knows everything and he has such great ideas and thoughts on everything that if you just keep giving him space, he's going to fill it up with the right thing. And what I was going to say, I was like, oh, well, but if you look at Merkborg, you open that, it doesn't give you everything you need. You've got to fill in a lot of the space, because I think there's also this assumption that you bring to the table a good amount of knowledge of like how to put together an adventure and run it and things like that. And, and maybe it's just, another hit at it. I know nothing, but the other thing that you got me thinking about was there's been 2 times at RFTCon that come to mind immediately where I've played in a game that is not the kind of game that I would want to run ever.
Right.
And I ran one of them, right? So like I ran Shadowrun 2nd edition, rules as written, last year. And
you're saying that's not a game you would normally.
I have very fond memories of running or playing.
Nobody believes you, Tim.
I have very fond memories of playing in Shadowrun back in the '90s, late '90s.
Right.
And it was a lot of fun to do a one shot. And I think we all had a great time. And then everyone walked away and said, "We're good. We don't have to do that ever again." and then at RFTCon this year again, I played in a game that is not my jam in like the genre and the system. None of it was, but I had an amazing time with the people at the table, and I think part of it was getting out of my comfort zone of what I like to do and having a new experience. So maybe, I don't know what's in this box, but maybe there's something in this box that I should bully someone into running at RFTCon.
Yes. All right, let's do it. I think that's a good intro.
Let's jump in. So, Tim, if you open up the box, and if you can just, obviously listeners at home can't see this. So, John, I'm going to ask you to just give us a description of what you see on your screen as Tim holds up his prize.
All right,
I do want to say one other thing before I open it. I now feel a little bit bad about how I filled out the form, because I filled out this form and I even at the end, like I was like, I don't even know, just send me whatever weird stuff you got. And I didn't realize until someone pointed out after that I'd given them my money and I'd hit send, that's exactly the opposite of what they ask you to do. They ask you, and when you say that he's such a nice person, he also is like, he lives in my town, right?
That's right.
So
he lives in Michigan. We should say that. Like we could pull this off because Tim could drive there.
I could, and I wonder, like our town, it's not that big a town. I don't know. I could know this guy, right? You could be like, oh, it's that guy from the grocery store. And I just like did exactly the opposite of what he asked for. And you said he's such a nice guy. It makes me feel a little bit bad. A little bit.
Well,
But
we're
I
about to
don't think
find
we
out
said
if there's
nice.
a
I think we said
past-
he's a character. Which
okay. Well, that's better then.
Well, yeah, I mean, my only interactions with him at that con game, and I think I've visited their booth at Gen Con once or twice, but I mean, I have only had delightful experiences with him. So I think he's a very nice guy. We're about to find out if there's like
here
a
we go.
really passive aggressive note in there.
I'm hoping. I'm kind of hoping there is. All right.
package is
so
open.
First
Let's see,
thing.
what do we got?
First thing is. Wait,
Minis? What is this? It looks like 3D printed minis.
Okay. Well, I don't want to give anything away.
They have bases.
There is a base. Okay, so it looks like it's a couple of minis. Let's see if we can tell.
Yeah, there's somebody like dead on the ground, and there's like a giant guy, like a Robotech Riffs guy. That's definitely a Riffs mini.
I think that, and it's titled Chainsaw Glitter Boy and Pilot.
Yes. Okay, so now you've heard the term Glitter Boy. We'll have to discuss that later.
The boy is also in the package. He's there. So
yes,
and I do see a chainsaw, but I don't know what that has to do with this other guy.
So is the
Glitter Boy is a character class in Riffs.
Probably
the Glitter Boy, a Dog Boy. There's other choices, but
probably the best.
It's like a mech pilot, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
they also gave me a commercial because this looks like it's like, hey, go buy some stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
he's
man.
got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the front. There it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably like if you open their webpage, this. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I miss the days when like companies would put in a little catalog of their stuff.
Yeah.
There's an advertisement for the thing I just got. That's nice.
Oh, nice.
It's like,
for
hey,
the Christmas surprise package.
You should buy a Christmas surprise package, which is what I have.
Yes.
Anyways,
did they highlight the little rules that are like, please don't give us vague instructions?
You know what? They don't care about me as much as I think they do.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. What's next?
Oh, there is a note.
Okay. Let's see it. Read us the note.
Okay, I'll read the note because that's hard to read. Here you go, Tim. Something weird? Check. Got dinosaurs? Check. Something with robots? Check. Evil or sexy cyborg? Check. Well, a glitter boy suit of power armor anyways. Enjoy. And then he signed it.
Oh my
Nice.
goodness.
And it is a game called Dinosaur Swamp. And the cover features like a T-Rex style dinosaur duking it out with a couple of glitter boys in armor, trying to shoot him, and you see it over like a mech pilot or something. It's pretty amazing. Is it a Riffs expansion book or is it its own game?
It is Riffs World book number 26.
26, Dinosaur Swamp.
What is that dinosaur chewing on? Is that like a piece of mech?
With I think it's a piece of mech.
Okay.
Now, I think he is trying to contest one of my favorite games, which is Predation by Shannon Germain, right? That uses the Cypher system, which is also got robots and dinosaurs.
Yeah, but is the cover of Predation as good as that cover? Can we be honest?
Well,
and by good I mean amazing.
Yes. Okay. Do you want me to be honest or fun for the podcast? Because if I'm going to be honest, I like
be both.
I like the other one more. I like.
What if you don't tell us what you're doing, and then it just leaves us with the uncertainty?
Yeah,
that's right.
So, Dinosaur Swamp coming soon to RFTCon near you.
All right.
Hey, I have to say was that a little sticky note that he put? That was pretty delightful.
That's pretty great.
I am keeping that. Some of this other stuff may end up in other people's houses, but the note is staying.
Yes,
that's awesome.
It is really
all right.
nice.
Next up. Ooh, that's a big one.
A thick one.
All right, Riffs Ultimate Edition. That is a sweet looking book, and it's got like a giant eye computer with like arms reaching out, and there's like a cyborg dude in the middle, and like that's crazy. Is that the creature you described at RFTCon, Andy? Is that the vampire intelligence?
I don't know.
But who is this? That's what I need to know.
That's one of our heroes.
So he's giving off ninja vibes to me. That pose. Yeah.
Is he part wolf there? Are there wolf ears poking out of that hairstyle?
No.
Oh.
But maybe they are for you. And why are you assuming it's male?
I did it again with the wolves. I assume all wolves are male. What's wrong with me?
What is wrong with
All right, so you've got the game Riffs.
There's one more. There's one more to come. One more.
What is that?
Oh.
Riffs. Oh, that looks sweet, actually. So that's Riffs World Book number, what number is that? 33?
33. So
Riffs Northern Gun 1, and it's like It's like mechs versus dragons, and there's a dead dragon on the cover, and there's two mechs there that have like shot the dragon to death. That is sweet.
That is beautiful. Now this might be coming to RFTCon near you.
Yeah, you might have to run that one.
I don't know if I have to run. Someone has to run this.
I'd run that.
I'd run games at every RFTCon.
It's recorded. I'm saying it on a podcast.
Other
I'll
people
run
should
Rift
get a
Northern
chance.
Gun.
That is beautiful.
Okay, well, hey, that's awesome. Hey, did you get any signatures in those books?
He might sign them for you.
Because I did check yes on the signature thing.
I bought a book from him at a convention from Palladium, and he drew like a dragon for me on the.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Oh, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 signatures in it.
Oh,
Yep.
Nice. That's amazing.
Yeah. In the core book, yeah. What?
Okay.
So, something I was never going to buy, but I'm glad I did because, a piece of wisdom. My best friend has given me 2 pieces of wisdom that I carry with me always. One is take any food that you would ever prepare, and if you can batter it, deep fry it, and people won't eat it, you had no business serving that food in the first place.
Okay.
The other piece of advice is always, always, always make time to do something stupid.
There you go. I love it.
Well, hey, Tim, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for spending your $60 or whatever for the purpose of the show. And who knows? Maybe one or more of those will find their way into a campaign you're running in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I want to see that
the
Northern Gun
predation
book.
connection there seems like one you could possibly pursue, right?
Sure. Yeah. And I'm sure part of that was somewhere in my mind. But,
All right. Well, hey, gentlemen. So I have a question for you guys, and it's kind of a repeat of something that the 3 of us, I think, have talked about in the past, but I want to put a slightly more specific spin on it. And that is my 12-year-old son has started asking really enthusiastically for me to run a D&D game for him and his friends, who are all 12-year-old boys. And so he's already got a gang of about 6 boys his age eager to play. And I'm excited that this is the first time he's really expressed much interest in the hobby. His older sibling has done a lot more role playing, but I don't know. But I'm also a little scared because I've been in the room with just like 2 12-year-old boys, and it was a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious. Both of you, I think, have some experience with this. And I'm wondering, beyond just the general question of like, running games for kids, what do I need to know, or what should I keep in mind thinking about a game for like specifically preteen boys?
That's a great question. I'm going to defer mostly to Tim, but I'll throw in my 2 cents just off the top here.
Yeah.
I think it's just important to remember that the game they want to play is probably not the game you want to run.
Yeah.
Or if it is, like, you should maybe take a few moments and channel your younger self and prepare for that sort of goofy, it's going to be like slightly boundary pushing for 12-year-olds. They're going to say things that are inappropriate on purpose, and that's going to be okay. But I think Tim probably has more advice about this than I do. So
I think you nailed it, John. My biggest advice is always just, why are we here? Right. And the reason we're here running games for kids is usually different than the reason that we're here running games for our friends, right? Of our age. When I'm running games for kids, there's only one outcome that I'm looking to achieve, and that is they walk away talking about it, that they had fun, they want to do it again. That's it. So rules don't really matter. I think they like rolling dice a lot. They like pushing boundaries at that age, because like that age is right. They're right at the cusp of like they are seeking and needing approval from adults, but they also want to push boundaries. So I think a lot of positive reinforcement of when they do things that are silly or and even positive reinforcement on things that you wouldn't let maybe fly other times in your house,
Yes.
from your own child.
It's important. You don't want it to become a free for all of poor behavior, but at the same time, you do want to make space to let them do their thing, which can be hard. The other piece of advice is you'll have to play it by ear, because they may like if they're paying good attention, or if they're quiet, that may mean they're actually really focused on it. But My guess is a shorter session is probably better. We remember those epic overnight sessions, but upon reflection, that was probably like a couple rounds of play and then watching some of Star Wars on Betamax and then coming back to the game. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't the 9 hours of unstopped, totally focused play that maybe we romanticize it as.
Yeah.
What kind of game are you thinking of running?
Well, so I don't know.
Merkborg?
You should give them a 3-hour lecture on the differences between different fantasy RPGs and then let them choose. Maybe put together a PowerPoint to help them understand better the different rule sets and styles of play. No, maybe that's a bad idea.
You joke, but I mean, I kind of started going down that dark road because when he was talking about it, I was like, well, what kind of game do you want to play? Because there's every type of game. And I started listing out the different, there's science fiction, there's fantasy, there's games that mix the two, there's everything. And then I realized, his eyes were glazing over. He just kind of reiterated he just wanted to play D&D. So I've wrestled with this more than I probably need to, but like I feel like I have two instincts. At that age, me and my friends were rules kids. I don't know if it's a preteen boy thing or just a preteen thing in general, or if it was just us. But we were playing Roll Master, which is this dense, rules heavy thing, and
which is
loved
amazing.
it. Yeah, and that was a very big part of the whole draw of the experience was engaging with these like deep rules that we could master to achieve what we wanted to do, right? So there's that instinct. And then I don't know these boys well enough because I think it's equally possible that if I, plop down a 250-page D&D player's handbook in front of them, that it will immediately destroy any fun that's happening, and that they just want to do dumb stuff and occasionally be told to roll a d20.
Can I ask Tim a question?
I have a suggestion, but go ahead, John.
Well, your son played, I believe, in a game of DCC.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
At Gen Con, and then he got the book.
My son is 13. We went to Gen Con. We played a bunch of games at Gen Con, and he'd played a bunch of games before. He's been playing for a few years now. We played a game of Dungeon Crawl Classic at Gen Con, and he said, we have to buy that book now. Now. And he spent the entire 4-hour drive home reading the book.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay. And it was just, I mean, I don't think DCC is your jam, Andy, right? But I think a group of 6 kids hopped up on Coke and Pepsi, or Coke and pizza is that might be like the perfect little welcome, because there's not that many rules to follow, and even if you don't, it really doesn't matter.
And put yourself in that position. Like, that game didn't exist when we were 12 or 13. But how much fun would it have been to roll up a handful of peasants and have them die in horrible ways when you're 12 years
Yes.
old? Like, is there anything funnier than that to a 12-year-old? I'm trying, like, this. It's funny for the same reason that Monty Python and the Holy Grail is funny. It's absurdist humor about the medieval world, and I think that could probably go over big.
And ripping up the character sheets like at the table every time one of them dies. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I do have both DCC and then Mutant Crawl Classics in the house, so nice. That is sounding pretty appealing to me.
Because I feel like Morkborg is like the connoisseur's version of that, right? Like DCC, the funnel is about engagement and silly fun, and Morkborg is like the artisanal version of that. Like, it's very intentionally doing. It does the same thing, but I think that game is for us, and DCC is more for younger people.
Yeah,
like older people can enjoy it too, but I think there's more intention behind Morkborg to be sort of arch, whereas Dungeon Crawl Classics is very much what it is.
Yeah, you're all kind of striking a pose when you play Morkborg in the good way. As I think about it, DCC plays pretty light, but there's hundreds of pages of rules if you want to go down the rabbit trail of like reading all the weird spell lists and stuff like that. There's a lot of meat in there for you. So, okay, that's a good suggestion. Anything else I should consider, or is that just?
Well, I think just one more comment on that. I just remember Tim posting all these photos of his son, like just stopping wherever he happened to be and opening the DCC book and reading it. Like, once he had played the game and then he got his hands on the book, he was hooked. And I think there's something about the 12, 13-year-old brain that is just about consuming information and data, and if you can get them interested in an experience, then that's the kind of thing that happens.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey guys, thanks for chatting through that. We got a little bit of time left, so let's roll on our table of topics. Table of topics is kind of dwindling because we are have almost gone through our whole list of them, and we've been too lazy to refill it. So I'm going to ask one of you, John. I see you brandishing a die to make.
Speaking of Dungeon Crawl Classics, I have a Dungeon Crawl Classics, a Goofy Dice actual D3. It's like a little 3-sided cylinder thing, and it can roll 1, 2, or 3. And it also has these markings for like RS on it. I don't know what those mean, but
I don't know what those would mean either.
But I'm going to roll an actual 3-sided die.
Yeah. All right, a D3 here. Let's hear it.
3.
Okay. This is an interesting question. It has Chris written all over it, by the way. So I'm a little sad he's not here to discuss this. The topic we'll be discussing today is, should gaming feel like an event or like hanging out with friends? Yeah, what's your gut response to that question?
My gut response is, let's throw that question out.
No.
But let me finish. Let's throw out the word should. Okay, because I think that now we're getting to like how should you have fun?
Oh, yeah.
Like what how do we define how fun is to be had? So maybe we just take the stance of like, what's the difference between because like, and it's a spectrum.
All right, so the topic we'll be discussing is what's different about a game that feels like an event versus a game that feels like hanging out with friends.
I'll give a quick answer, like just sort of from my own experience. My normal game feels like a game of hanging out with friends, right? Like that's my primary motivation for doing it. So I get together. We're playing Vastin right now. They're good sports. They're usually willing to play what I suggest. Other people occasionally GM. It's a good group of friends, and we hang out. And sometimes we just laugh and talk, and sometimes we play the game. So that's my primary. However, I will say, like at RFT Con, when I plan my James Bond turns into Knights Black Agents game,
a legendary game,
that was an event for me. Like my setup for that was very different because I didn't know who was going to be there. I didn't know how they like to play. I had to focus more on the game and the adventure I was putting together. Whereas when I focus on prepping for my game, to the extent that I do, it's more about making sure my friends are having a good time and like, oh, Murph likes to do this. Let's make sure we include some of that. And Jess, she likes her magical powers. So let's make sure we include some of that. And it's more about making sure those particular players are engaged. Whereas that's something I just couldn't do for my RFT-Con game because I didn't know who was coming.
Tim, what about you?
Yeah, so most of the time I treat it very much as an event. And especially like my group is so busy, and we get together. We get 2 hours every other week when we're lucky, and then we end up missing a lot because this person has to travel and that person has to do whatever. And so we have such limited time that we kind of have a 5 minutes to chit chat, and then we're rolling in, and it's really focused as an event. But then I contrast that with about a year and a half ago, we had this weekend of gaming where we went to a different place, and there was like 5 of us, right? And we sat down and we had 4 sessions of this game, but then a lot of time in between where it was just hanging out. And when I think back to that, the game was fun, but the part of that I keep coming back to is all of the hanging out times in between. That's what made that event special for me, was really the spending time with friends part of it. So I don't know. I see it going both ways. How well, so you have this like very, very common family game. What does that feel like?
Yeah, so I feel like I've got a foot in both of these camps at the moment. I've got a roughly weekly family game of Call of Cthulhu that is very playing with friends, right? I put a lot of work into it. In fact, I put a lot of work and planning into that game, despite the fact that the actual game sessions are casual. There is no, okay, 5 minutes for chatting is done. Now we're going to focus on the game, and interruptions are happening, and that's no big deal. That's part of the experience. On the flip side, roughly once a month, I run a game for a group of adult friends that feels very much like the event. Just like you said, Tim, because we've only got 2 or 3 hours a month, there's this extra weight that be time spent well and efficiently, kind of, and it has its own joys and its own stresses, I've found, that are different from the family one. So Yeah, I don't know. I feel like an awful lot of my adult gaming these days feels event-like. And I don't know if, I genuinely don't know if that's good or bad.
Is the event friendship distinction one about the pressure you feel in prepping for it? Is that what the distinction is for you guys, or is it something else? Like not to get too abstract, but like event suggests to me something of greater importance and seriousness than hanging out, right? So is that part of the definition for us as we define it? Because I think it's part of mine, but maybe that's just my own.
Well, I don't know. I think maybe Professor Kyle is rubbing off on you.
I know, right?
Mr. Definitions over here. Well, I don't know, because like I have some. I think there's no clear break of like level of prep versus whether it's hanging out, because I run about once a month or every other month a game at work for coworkers after hours. And a couple of times I've brought some zero prep things, so we played Stealing Stories for the Devil, the new Monty Cook game. And it's an explicitly zero prep game. But it still felt very much like an event. Andy was just pointing out that you have some of the opposite effect, right? Where you have a lot of planning, but it feels much more like hanging out. And I think we've got 4 different combos here.
Yeah. My gut response when you ask that question, John, is the games I run that feel like events are games where I feel some pressure to, well, I mean, I'm always playing with people I consider friends. An event game for me is one where there isn't maybe quite as much like assumption of the benefit of the doubt. I know that people may be a little less well, and there's a little bit more of a sense that I have to make this time like worthwhile. Whereas with, when I'm playing with my family, if the session is a complete bust, there's no one intends that. And I don't take that as any sort of calling into question whether we should do this or if this is worthwhile or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that has to do with, I think part of it is how much are you worrying about it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I do worry about event games. Even when I'm not planning, I may not even be planning as much, but I worry about event games. Even when everyone involved is a lovely human being and I know it's going to be fun.
Yep. All right. Any other thoughts on that one, Tim?
No.
Pressure's on you, Tim. Come
on. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like thinking about Gen Con again, and I ran 2 games at Gen Con, and one of them definitely felt like an event, and one of them definitely felt like hanging out. And then when I was playing in games, I think again it was about like half and half, where it felt like one or the other. Personally, I think I get more out of the game itself when it feels like an event. And I think that's because, like, for me, my personality, that I get more payoff, like that I felt like I don't know if achieved is the right word, but I did something.
Well, good thoughts. Yeah. Awesome. Guys, thanks for chatting through that. I guess in closing, usually Chris does like our sort of outros, so you're gonna listen to me fumbling through it, but yeah,
that's all right. I can already hear Chris in my head shouting at the podcast player,
yeah.
So like, what's one more opportunity for him to do that? So
yeah, so I guess just to do our kind of semi-canned intro, we've been Roll for Topic. We're part of the Roll for It Media Network on our sister show, The Splat Book, a representative of which is right here in the room with us, I guess virtually.
Splatbook rules.
Yeah, Splatbook's a wonderful podcast. You should check it out. John, do you have anything you want to call attention to that's particularly neat that you and Kyle have done Splatbook wise lately?
Well, we answered a couple of really crazy questions this week, but I can preview what we're doing next time.
Ooh.
Oh. Is that 5e?
John is holding up the Lord of the Rings role-playing game, the 5e version of it.
Well, this started as a conversation between Colin and I. Was talking about the difference between the covers of this game and the One Ring game, and that descended into differences between the game. And I won't say anything more about it, but I think we're both surprised at how we felt about the 5e version of Lord of the Rings. I'll leave it at that.
I am trying. I'm staring at John intently, trying to figure out if that's a good surprise or bad surprise.
Yeah, I can't
genuinely can't tell.
Right
okay.
Now.
Yeah, because then why would you listen to the episode if you already had the answer, right?
Yeah, Andy, gosh.
Yeah. So that episode will be out a week or so in a week or two,
weeks,
right?
Yeah.
So All right, awesome.
Yep.
Hey, thanks once again for joining, guys. I really appreciate it. I know Chris appreciates it as well. Chris will, presumably be back next time.
Yes.
And until then, I've been Andy Rao.
I've been John Corey.
And Tim Saucer.
All right, awesome. And remember, if your players are having fun, you're a great GM.
A great GM.
The best GM.
That's right.